Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in spar of words over Gaza conflict after Biden's warning that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. NATO and leaders from multiple countries reject French President Emmanuel Macron's comment on sending troops to Ukraine. Michigan, a battleground state for the 2024 US presidential primary, is holding the Republican and Democratic primary, while Trump is battling Haley in a bid to strengthen his grip on presidential nomination. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Tamil Nadu to visit Maharashtra later today will lay the foundation stones of several developmental projects in both the states. All right, let's get to the big story. The United States says that it does not want to see tensions rise further between Israel and Hezbollah, adding that Israel had assured Washington that it wants a diplomatic solution.
We do not want to see either side escalate the conflict in the north. And in fact, we are going to continue to pursue a diplomatic resolution of that conflict. And while we saw the defense minister's comments, we have also taken note that repeatedly the defense minister and other officials of the government of Israel, including the prime minister, have said publicly that they would prefer the situation to be resolved diplomatically. And so that's what we're going to continue to pursue. And ultimately, that would make military action unnecessary.
In his response to US President Joe Biden, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he had consistently resisted pressure to end the conflict prematurely, and that this stand of his has popular US support that will help them continue the campaign until total victory over Hamas is achieved.
Since the beginning of the conflict, I have been leading a political campaign with the purpose to curb the pressures intended to end the war before its time, and on the other hand, to gain support for Israel. We have significant success in this area because today the Harvard-Harris poll is published in the United States, which shows that 82% of the American public supports Israel. This means that 4 out of 5 citizens in the US support Israel and not Hamas. This gives us another year of strength to continue the campaign until complete victory.
Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks came after US President Joe Biden warned that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. On Monday, Biden said the US hopes to have a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza by next Monday. The US President also suggested that Israel could lose support from around the world if it keeps up with this incredibly conservative government they have. The Emir of Qatar has carried out a state visit to Paris, where he met French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss the bilateral relationship between Paris and Doha. The two leaders discussed the West Asia situation, including possibility of release of hostages in Gaza, a potential ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and the possibility of a two-state solution in the future. Ross Cullen gets us more from Paris.
Well, the talks taking place on Tuesday at the Élysée Palace, the French presidential office and residence, which you can see behind me here in central Paris. President Macron hosting Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, for an official state visit, state dinner and official bilateral discussions between Paris and Doha about their bilateral relationship. But also, crucially, the key underlining point of the two men meeting is to try to forward the discussion on the situation in the Middle East. Can there be a deal to release some or all of the hostages still being held by Hamas inside Gaza, who were captured from inside Israel during Hamas's attack on October the 7th? Can there be a deal on a temporary or permanent ceasefire. That's certainly something that the United States president is hopeful of. Also, the continued flow of aid into Gaza during the conflict and also after the conflict. And on that point, can there be an eventual end to the war? What form would the two-state solution take? Now, the Elysee Palace have said very clearly that that is a key priority both for Qatar and for France as well, making sure that there is that option open for the two-state solution after the end of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. But Qatar has played this crucial role. We know that the Prime Minister was here over the weekend for talks with the United States, Israel and Egypt as well. It's the second time that France has hosted those specific four nations to try to get a deal on hostages, on aid and on an eventual end to the conflict. France being the crucial player in hosting those talks, the Qatari Prime Minister here over the weekend, and now on Tuesday for an official state visit, the Emir of Qatar. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
Yemen's Houthis said that they are ready to reconsider their attacks on the ships in the Red Sea, but only if Israel would stop in the Gaza Strip. Houthis said the situation would be reassessed if the conflict ends and humanitarian aid was free to enter. U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby confirmed that U.S. troops will not be stationed in Ukraine following French President Emmanuel Macron's statement that France could not rule out sending troops to Ukraine. France's Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné clarified that France could send troops for specific needs but not for fighting in the war against Russia. Kirby also denied that the U.S. could have non-combat participation in the war. The only U.S. military personnel currently on the ground are part of the Defense Attached Office. NATO's allies, Germany, Britain, Italy, Spain, Poland and the Czech Republic distanced themselves from Macron's idea, while the Kremlin deemed a direct conflict between NATO and Russia inevitable.
U.S. military personnel that are in Ukraine are associated with the embassy as part of the Defense Attaché Office, and they're doing important work in terms of helping us with the accountability of weapons and systems that are provided to Ukraine. The President's been clear there's not going to be U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder said that the United States has no plans to send troops to fight in Ukraine during a briefing on Tuesday. Ryder added that international efforts are coming in order to ensure that Ukraine receives aid as quickly as possible to meet their most urgent needs.
We have no service members to fight in Ukraine. The president has been pretty clear on that, and that continues to be our position.
Russia will escalate an ongoing influence operation this spring aimed at destabilizing Ukraine and scuppering international support for Kyiv in its two-year-old conflict with Moscow, the Ukrainian intelligence warned on Tuesday. Ukraine is struggling to fend off Russian troops along much of the front line as Kyiv faces challenges in replenishing its ranks and a potential cut in the U.S. military aid. The Kremlin will bolster its attacks by stepping up efforts to seed disinformation on social media, sparking conflict among Ukrainians and sowing doubt among Kyiv's allies of its chances for victory, according to the prestigious, Presidential Intelligence Committee. Kyiv and its international partners say the war is part of years-long hybrid effort by Moscow to subjugate Ukraine as it embraces the West. In a statement carried by Kyiv's domestic security and military spy agencies, the committee said the operation would culminate in late May when President Zelensky's 5-year mandate would normally run out. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and praised the kingdom's efforts in seeking a solution to end Russia-Ukraine war. A statement on Zelensky's website said the two men discussed Kyiv's peace formula for ending the conflict, and the president thanked the Crown Prince for his valuable advice in finding ways to speed up its implementation. Zelensky and the Crown Prince discussed the content of a peace summit Switzerland has agreed to host later in the year. Also, they discussed possible steps for truly restoring security for Ukraine, Europe and the world. The Saudi state news agency said the Crown Prince reaffirmed the kingdom's keenness and support for all international endeavors and efforts aimed at resolving the Ukrainian-Russian crisis. All right, let's get to the latest on U.S. elections as pollings have closed in parts of Michigan, where both Democrats and Republicans are voting in the state's primary. U.S. President Joe Biden is being projected to easily win the Democratic presidential primary race, Edison Research projected. But a protest vote by Democrats angry over his support for Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza was showing signs of strength as initial returns were counted. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley are continuing to fight it out for the Republican nomination. On Saturday, Trump defeated Haley by 30 points in her home state of South Carolina, but Haley has vowed to continue in the race through Super Tuesday on March 5th. All right, DD India correspondent Ira Spitzer joins us from San Francisco. Ira, good morning. Now, we've just told our viewers about polling getting concluded in parts of Michigan. Let us get the latest from you on this first.
Well, the big story of today and into the evening here in the United States has been the dissent in both the Democrat and Republican parties that was evident from those results in the state of Michigan. Now, on the one hand, no surprises about the overall results in the sense that Donald Trump and Joe Biden both easily prevailed in their party's nominating contest, although the Republican delegates will actually be dished out on Saturday as well. But in both of those instances, in the case of the Republicans, Nikki Haley still, at least so far, with something around 30% of the vote, signaling that there is some unease with Donald Trump as the party's nominee, despite the fact his overwhelming sort of march to the nomination here, it appears. And then on the Democrat side, the big story is this uncommitted category, which at the last I checked was at about 15%. So 15% of Democratic voters have checked the uncommitted box on their ballots. And there was a big push ahead of this primary for voters who were not happy with Joe Biden's policy towards Israel, his support of Israel as it continues its operations in the Gaza Strip. So the message from organizers was show your frustration with Joe Biden by checking uncommitted. And from at least what we know so far, that frustration appears to be very high because the final results would certainly be a historic win, it seems, for the uncommitted column if things continue in the direction that at least the initial results indicate. So Michigan has a large Arab American population, and they certainly have mobilized to try and support this uncommitted vote. So that's really the big story that we're all watching, is how big will this uncommitted vote be in Michigan among the Democratic voters.
All right, Ira, also, how do you evaluate the contest, the Republican contest between Trump and Haley? What is it that is working in favor of Trump, as we've seen him win the primaries, the latest being South Carolina? What is it that is working in his favor in spite of the court cases? And secondly, what is it that Nikki Haley is still positive about? What is, why is she still holding on to hope for Super Tuesday?
Right. Well, certainly everything has been fairly positive, I would say, at least in terms of polling for Donald Trump, despite all of his legal problems. We've seen him really maintain this stranglehold on the Republican Party throughout the primary season, with voters apparently not that concerned, at least Republican voters, not that concerned about his court cases. And it certainly does have the impact of allowing him to present himself as somebody who, as he puts it, is the victim of politically motivated legal action. So for Trump, he is in the driver's seat in the Republican nomination process. That is very clear. For Nikki Haley, yes, she does face long shot odds to try and change her fortunes and likely Super Tuesday, which happens in exactly a week's time. That's when a lot of American states will go to the polls. That will really be her last stand, it seems, unless something changes. That would be her last stand to try and stem this momentum of Donald Trump. But there are significant concerns with Trump. There's, of course, the many legal problems that he faces, which both could derail his candidacy in some ways and could certainly do pose a problem for voters, Republican voters, as well as potentially voters in the general election. So that is something that Nikki Haley has working in her favor, as we don't quite know where Trump's legal troubles will take us. And then I should mention on the Democratic side, it's worth noting that Michigan is this very important swing state. Joe Biden just won that state last time by just a bit over 100,000 votes. So if we do see this continued anger at the president for his handling of the Gaza conflict from this portion of the Michigan electorate, that could pose real problems for the president if Michigan does end up being a very close swing state, as we would expect it to be in the general election.
All right. Thank you, Ira, for joining in with those details. And Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley took aim at former President Donald Trump 1 week before the state's presidential primary election, saying she would be a better candidate against President Joe Biden. The former South Carolina governor addressed a crowd in Centennial ahead of the state's primary elections on March 5th. Nikki Haley also reminded her supporters of a recent comment by Donald Trump encouraging Russia's President Vladimir Putin to invade United States allies. While speaking at the rally in Colorado, Haley also said that Trump will not be able to win a presidential election and that the country's next president will be a woman.
Donald Trump got on stage, went off his teleprompter, and said that he would actually encourage Putin to invade our allies. Now think about what that means. That means Donald Trump's going to side with a tyrant who kills his political opponents. That means Donald Trump is going to side with a thug where 500,000 people have died or been wounded because of Russia invading Ukraine. That means Donald Trump is going to side with a madman who arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. Putin's made no bones about the fact that he wants to destroy America. And Donald Trump's going to choose him over our allies who stood with us after 9/11?
President Joe Biden urged the top 4 leaders of Congress on Tuesday to take swift action to prevent a potential government shutdown and call for the passage of emergency aid for Ukraine and Israel. President Biden said that the U.S. needs to find a solution to fund the government while providing aid to Ukraine and avoiding an economically damaging government shutdown. Biden made the comments during a meeting with leading Democrats and Republicans in the Oval House of the White House.
Replenish the air defenses for Israel, and we have to work on making sure they don't face the threat from, they can face the threat from what's going on in the Middle East, not just from Hamas, but from Iran. And and government funding, I'm sure you guys had all of that all taken care of, but all kidding aside, I think that it's Congress's responsibility to fund the government. We got to get about doing a shutdown would damage the economy significantly, and I think we all agree to that, and we need bipartisan solutions.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Up next, waiting for a short break. But after the break, Japan will begin the 4th discharge of radioactive treated wastewater from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean from today. Brazil's Federal Police and Environmental Protection Agency rescue native parrots and monkeys suspected of illegal trafficking to Togo. Stay with us to know more. Farmers' protests in Europe continue through Polish capital against food imports from Ukraine and EU regulations intended to curtail climate change.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter. We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. Ministers and international leaders from the G20 held a meeting in Brazil with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, putting inequality and poverty as well as climate change at the top of the agenda. Brazil's Environment Minister, Marina Silva Brazil, stressed on the need to tackle climate change to avoid further global instability in the celebration of 200 years of diplomatic relations with the US. The UNDP's administrator, Achim Steiner, said the G20 decisions have immediate consequences in the actions taken by governments in key global issues like poverty, hunger, inequality and climate change. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva pushed to give developing nations of the Global South a wider platform in the G20 meetings during Brazil's presidency. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Tuesday that he could not rule out widening a national ban on imports of Ukrainian grains if the European Union does not act to protect the bloc's markets. Poland last year extended a ban on Ukrainian grain imports. Tusk made the remarks during a visit to Prague as thousands of Polish farmers took to the streets, escalating a protest against food imports from Ukraine and the EU green rules. Thousands of farmers marched through the Polish capital before reaching the Prime Minister's office. Polish farmers protested in Warsaw, escalating their month-long strike that started early February against food imports from Ukraine and EU regulations intended to curtail climate change. Polish farmers began a series of protests throughout the country earlier this month, which included a near-total blockade of all Ukrainian border crossings, as well as disruptions at ports and on roads nationwide. TEPCO, or the Tokyo Electric Power Company, and the Japanese government will begin the fourth discharge of the radioactive treated wastewater from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean on Wednesday. Now, the move comes after the latest batch of water has been confirmed to meet radioactivity levels within the standards set for both the entities. Now, the wastewater release first began in August last year, despite opposition from countries such as China. All right, DD India correspondent Chris Gilbert joins us from Tokyo, Japan. Chris, good morning. Let us get more details from you as to how many more tranche of wastewater is still left to be discharged into the Pacific Ocean.
By the end of this fourth discharge, which is beginning today, about 31,200 tons of that are going to have been released into the Pacific Ocean. So there's a long way to go. It's going to be about 30 years or 40 years to complete this very long-term project. This discharge is going to be the same as the previous three, to the extent that it's going to be 7,800 tons released over about 17 days. The point of difference this time is that TEPCO has a bit more confidence, it says, in the process, so it's going to skip a step as this water is released. Up until now, right before release, it's given a last-minute check for levels of tritium. That's a radionuclide which cannot be extracted or cleaned from the water, and so it is diluted with about 1,000 times more seawater. It is given a last-minute check usually before release, but now TEPCO said it's not going to do that anymore. It is going to start instead taking a sample every day of the released water as it goes out into the ocean to check for tritium levels. It's also going to be checked daily about 3 kilometers out into sea, the seawater, and for over a week after this discharge finishes, about 17 days from now. But up to this point, TIPCO and the government are relatively satisfied that the levels of tritium that remain in this water are well within their set safety standards.
All right, Chris. Now, the first tranche of wastewater, when it was released, it met with opposition from environment groups and countries like China. Any latest updates on the protest or the response of these environment groups or China coming in?
Well, as you can see here in front of the TIPCO headquarters today, it's pretty quiet, but this is usually the scene of protests, and you can expect on March 11th, which is the 13-year anniversary of the tsunami and meltdown which started all of this, there is going to be a protest here as there is every year. On the international front, on the geopolitics, look, China's blanket ban on all Japanese seafood remains in place, and that's not looking to change anytime soon. There hasn't been any movement from China on that. Japan has been urging some movement on this, but at the moment Xi Jinping, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, says he's waiting to see how the politics play out in South Korea and in Japan over the coming months, the domestic situation, before he agrees to a sit down with those leaders, a trilateral summit. That is the forum in which the Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is going to ask Xi Jinping and China in general to lift that blanket ban. But for now, it's no change. It's hurting Japan's economy, and they're looking to diversify their markets going forward.
All right, Chris, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those details. And from Japan, we now turn focus to Korea. Nurses are being asked in to make up for the shortfall, in fact, as thousands of trainee doctors continue to strike in South Korea. About 9,000 junior doctors have resigned since last week over wages, conditions, and a government plan to let in more students to medical schools. Chris Gilbert gets us more from Tokyo.
Well, the pressure is certainly mounting on Korea's health system, particularly on the front lines inside the hospitals, which are obviously facing drastic staff shortages. Now they are turning patients away. There are reports that emergency room beds are running out, that hospitals are entering what they call red alert when these beds start to become scarce, and also that nurses are now being requested to fill the shoes of doctors, to be given the legal protections or the legal entitlement to do that kind of work. There is reportedly some concern amongst this pool of nurses that they may be open or exposing themselves to legal action, to malpractice suits, which is interestingly one of the reasons why these doctors are resigning and walking out in the first place. One of their complaints is how legally vulnerable they are, as well as their pay, and the government plans to, boost 2,000 more students every year into medical schools without addressing these trainees, doctors' concerns first. Of course, these calls for better conditions, for better pay, are falling on unsympathetic ears with the government at the moment. They have taken action, filed complaints against 5 doctors who are members of the doctors' lobby in Korea. They have hired a prosecutor to the Health Ministry to give advice, and they have effectively given an ultimatum for all doctors and trainee doctors to return to their places of employment by the end of Thursday, by the end of February. And if they do so, they will not face any punitive action. If they fail to do this, then the government says it'll be unavoidable. These doctors will potentially face having their medical licenses suspended or even facing legal action. So this is all likely to come to a head at the end of play on Thursday. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo, reporting for DD India. Well, the
Secretariat employees in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir will go on a strike on February 29th against the government's discriminatory policies against them. Now, according to the president of the Secretariat Employees Association, Islamabad wants to fire Kashmiri ad hoc workers to replace them with those from Pakistan. The association alleged that the employees in the occupied region are not receiving fair treatment when it comes to their allowance. Members of the association are also annoyed as the employees in POK are not being promoted to permanent positions. There is simmering tension in Guinea after at least 2 people were shot dead during clashes between protesters and security forces. It comes amidst a general strike against the ruling military government for suppressing opposition views in the West African nation. DD India's correspondent Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
A general strike began in Guinea's capital, Conakry, on Monday. Shops, schools and markets were shut in protest against media censorship in the country. 2 years ago, the military government banned protests and arrested many opposition leaders, journalists and civil society members. A confederation of unions in Guinea called for the general strike to demand the release of the journalists and media activists who were arrested in January. But Monday's strike took a different turn when the protesters blocked roads, which led to sporadic clashes with security forces. 2 young men were shot and killed in the process. Tension had been building in Guinea since Friday after the Secretary General of the Union of Press Professionals of Guinea was sentenced to 6 months in prison. He was arrested in January for taking part in an unauthorized protest against the military government. Meanwhile, last week, the military dissolved the transitional government which was set up in 2022 to return the country to civilian rule. The junta leader, General Mamadi Doumbouya, has not given reasons for dissolving the transitional government. Nabil Ahmed Rufai in Accra, Ghana, reporting for DD India.
Waiting for a short break on DD India News Hour, but after the break, India is all geared for its first ever Startup Mahakumbh, the largest celebration of Indian startups from 18th to 20th of March at the prestigious Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. Today is National Science Day as India honors the great Indian physicist C.V. Raman. We tell you more about this year's theme ahead. The sea phase of Milan 2024 concluded with Indian Navy's commitment to fostering cooperation.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights and authentic information.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in spar words over Gaza conflict after Biden's warning that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. NATO and leaders from multiple countries reject French President Macron's comment on sending troops to Ukraine. Michigan, a battleground state for the 2024 US presidential primary, is holding the Republican-Democratic primary while Trump is battling Haley in a bid to strengthen his grip on presidential nomination. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Tamil Nadu to visit Maharashtra later in the day will lay the foundation stones of various development projects in both the states. On the second day of his three-state visit, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate and lay the foundation stone of multiple developmental projects in Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra today. In the public program at Thoothukudi, Prime Minister will lay the foundation stone of Outer Harbour Container Terminal at V.O. Chidambaram Port. The project aims to leverage India's long coastline and favourable geographic location and also strengthen India's competitiveness in global trade arena. Prime Minister will inaugurate various other projects aimed at making the port as the first green hydrogen hub port of the country. Now, these projects include desalination plant, hydrogen production and bunkering facility. Prime Minister will launch India's first indigenous green hydrogen fuel cell inland waterway vessel under Harit Nauka initiative. Prime Minister will also dedicate tourist facilities in 75 lighthouses across 10 states and union territories during the program. He will also dedicate several road and rail projects. DD India correspondent Anbar Hassan joins us from Tuticorin. Good morning, Anbar Hassan. We've just given a broad outline of Prime Minister's programs today in Tamil Nadu. Let us get more from you. Explain to us in detail how far will it strengthen the region and also be a boon for the economy.
The second day of Prime Minister visit in Tamil Nadu is visiting the Tuticorin district for inaugurating various schemes worth of around 17,000 crore. And this particular Tuticorin VOC Chidambaram port, it is a first green hydrogen harbour Prime Minister going to inaugurate, and also Prime Minister going to inaugurate the open harbour terminal, and also it's a kind of boosting to the southern Tamil Nadu and also the eastern coast of the India, and also Prime Minister inaugurating various schemes, and particularly Prime Minister yesterday attended the public rally in Tirupur and addressed the MSME entrepreneurs in the MSME sectors of Madurai, and today morning actually is reaching Tuticorin from the Madurai via helicopter, and he will reach around 10 a.m. here and will address the public gathering, and also inaugurating a various schemes in railways, harbour and all more developments. Particularly this Vivo Chidambaram harbour. It's the first green hydrogen harbour which is zero emission and aiming for the more green harbors, and also boosting the Sagar Mala scheme to developing the various harbors across the country. VOC, it's a kind of a gateway to the southern India for the economic and more developments. For inaugurating this, Prime Minister also along with inaugurating various railway lines from Vanchi-Maniachi station to the Tirunelveli, and boosting a railways network across the southern belt of Tamil Nadu. And also Prime Minister going to address a public gathering in the afternoon in Tirunelveli, where he address party gatherings, and this people are gathering and very much happy to see Prime Minister here, and Prime Minister also along with Prime Minister Union Waterways and Shipping Minister Sarbananda Sonowal, and also the TN Governor R.N. Ravi and other ministers are present here. This event it's a kind of significant to the boost of the economy in the southern region. Particularly we can see last December there is a heavy flood hit region in Tuticorin and Tirunelveli, and Prime Minister visiting these districts, it gives a kind of a boost to the development, and people are very happy. And particularly Prime Minister visit to Tamil Nadu for last January and February. This is a third visit to the state, and visited various Chennai to Tirupur, Madurai, and this is a Tuticorin visit. Prime Minister also engaging with and meeting the officials of harbour, and also enhancing the facility, particularly this VOC Chidambaram airport, the harbour, VOC harbour.
Yes.
It's going to be a zero emission harbour, and also this inauguration of open harbour terminal will significantly reduce the timing of return back and shipping of vessels containment. All these things will be enhanced in this inauguration, and also Prime Minister laying foundation stones for various schemes regarding the railway and also the development of southern regions of Tamil Nadu.
All right, yes, Anbar Hassan. So significant and ambitious projects to be launched today by the Prime Minister. We'll come back to you again during the day. As of now, thanks for joining in. And later in the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Maharashtra as well, and he will release the 16th installment amount of more than 21,000 crore rupees under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, that is PM Kisan, through direct benefit transfer to the beneficiaries. Also with this release, an amount of more than 3 lakh crores has been transferred to more than 11 crore farmer families. Prime Minister will also disburse the second and third installments of Namo Shetkari Maha Sanman Nidhi, benefiting about 88 lakh beneficiary farmers across Maharashtra. He will also disburse 825 crore rupees of revolving fund to 5.5 lakh women self-help groups across Maharashtra. He will also initiate distribution of 1 crore Ayushman cards across the state. He will also launch the Modi Awas Ghar Kul Yojana for OBC category beneficiaries. in the state. Prime Minister will also dedicate to the nation multiple irrigation projects benefiting Marathwada and Vidarbha region of Maharashtra. He will also inaugurate multiple rail projects worth more than 1,300 crore rupees in Maharashtra. Prime Minister will dedicate to the nation several projects for strengthening the road sector in Maharashtra. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pantri Bahidao-Nukara, paid courtesy call to India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar at his residence in New Delhi. Discussions underscored the existing civilizational ties, including cultural, linguistic and religious connections, on which the present-day India-Thailand robust partnership is based on. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, welcomed Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Thailand, Dr. Nukara, on Tuesday. Dr. S. Jaishankar and Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister chaired the 10th India-Thailand Joint Commission meeting in the national capital. This is his first official visit to India, which is scheduled for 4 days. The Indian Army has inducted a new bridge-laying system that is made in India. We'll get you more from DD India correspondent Nandita Dagar on this.
This is the launch vehicle of the 45-meter modular bridge, which has been designed by the DRDO and manufactured by Larsen & Toubro. It has been handed over to the Indian Army and has been delivered, accepted ceremonially by the Army Chief General Manoj Pandey. This modular bridge with a width of 4 meters can be laid in combinations of various lengths parallelly. Also, it has a very high endurance and its life is around 30 years. And that is why it can endure temperatures up to 45 degrees Celsius maximum and minimum 0 degrees Celsius. A commander and 6 men will be needed to operate this 45-meter modular bridge. Tanks, armored vehicles of up to 70 tons can traverse this bridge. This has a very high endurance and load carrying capacity. These are the various ramp vehicles which will load and unload these modules, different modules of the same bridge, and it will take around 90 minutes in the day to lay out the bridge fully and about 120 minutes in the night to lay it out fully. With camera person Vishwa Bandhu in New Delhi, this is Nandita Dagar for DD India.
India is all set to witness its first ever Startup Mahakumbh, the largest celebration of Indian startups from 18 to 20th of March at the prestigious Bharat Mandapam, New Delhi. The event will cement India's reputation as a melting pot of innovation and amplify the country's global startup footprint. The event is expected to host 1,000 startups, 10 plus thematic tracks, 1,000 plus investors, 500 plus incubators and accelerators, 5,000 plus conference delegates, 10 plus country delegates, 5,000 plus future entrepreneurs and 40,000 plus business visitors over the span of 3 days. Speaking at the curtain raiser, India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal emphasized that throughout the 3 days of Startup Mahakumbh, the startups will be able to engage with investors and relevant stakeholders and create a sub-ecosystem to support each other with ideas and learn from the experience of others.
Showcase to the world that this is only a 8 years young startup story, but in less than 8 years we've become the 3rd largest in the world with big aspirations for the future, sporting over 100 unicorns, with a number of good ideas on the anvil to grow and become bigger and better.
India observes National Science Day on February 28th to honor the great Indian physicist C.V. Raman. Now this year, the theme of the National Science Day is promoting indigenous technologies for Viksit Bharat. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya gets us more.
In the realm of scientific discovery, there are those luminaries whose contributions transcend time, shaping the very fabric of our understanding. On National Science Day, we pay homage to one such luminary, Sir C.V. Raman. A visionary scientist and a beacon of inspiration, C.V. Raman altered the course of science with his groundbreaking discovery, the Raman effect. Every year since 1987, National Science Day is celebrated on the 28th of February to honor the great Indian physicist Sir C.V. Raman, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. It was on this day in 1928 his discovery of the Raman effect came to light. This year, the theme of National Science Day is promoting indigenous technologies for Viksit Bharat.
This event is celebrated to commemorate the discovery, or rather the announcement of the discovery of Raman effect on 28th February in 1928. Sir C.V. Raman, who discovered this new type of radiation, is also called as Raman effect, Raman scattering, and so on and so forth. Till date, it remains one of the most significant scientific discoveries ever made in India. And this year's theme is Viksit Bharat at 2047.
The Raman effect revolutionized spectroscopy, empowering scientists to probe the intricate nature of matter with unparalleled precision. Raman spectroscopy became a cornerstone in fields ranging from chemistry and physics to biology and material science. But beyond his scientific achievements, C.V. Raman embodied the spirit of curiosity, perseverance, and national pride. His relentless pursuit of knowledge serves as a beacon of hope, inspiring generations to pursue their passions and push the boundaries of human understanding. As India commemorates National Science Day, let us not only celebrate the accomplishments of C.V. Raman, but also reaffirm our commitment to fostering a culture of scientific inquiry and innovation. Happy National Science Day. Tapas Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
Let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. The sea phase of Milan 2024 concluded on Tuesday. The Indian Navy's participation in Milan 2024 demonstrates its commitment to fostering cooperation and building maritime security partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region. Indian Navy's participation included both aircraft carriers INS Vikramaditya and INS Vikrant, the indigenous aircraft carrier showcasing India's commitment towards safeguarding its maritime. Indian Navy, NCB and Gujarat ATS together in a joint operation seized 3,100 kilograms of drugs along the Indian maritime border. The largest ever seizure of drugs in the Indian subcontinent. The international market value of these drugs is estimated to be more than 2,000 crore rupees. Indian priests perform Bhasma Aarti at India's Mahakaleshwar temple in Ujjain. The Bhasma Aarti is one of the earliest rituals in the temple. Devotees wake up well before dawn to witness and participate in the sacred ceremony. A short break ahead, but after the break, in a bid to kickstart the economy, Hong Kong government unveils its annual budget. After foot injury, Medvedev returns to action in Dubai Open to begin the 2024 season. Mumbai camp hopeful of a strong showing in the semi-finals. Ashreyas Iyer replaces Suryansh Shedge in the squad for the Ranji Trophy semi-final.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events. We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London. I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times. In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get to updates from the world of business now. Hong Kong's government has unveiled its annual budget as it struggles to kickstart the economy and revive the city's standing as a global financial hub. DD India correspondent Patrick Folk joins us from Hong Kong. Patrick, good morning. Can you give us an outline of what's in store in this budget unveiling?
Well, good morning to you. Things are getting underway right now in Hong Kong. The financial secretary started off in his opening remarks striking an upbeat tone, calling on people in Hong Kong to advance with confidence and to seize opportunities. Earlier in the week, Paul Lam talked about being effective and focused in the use of resources in delivering this budget. That may be described by some as a bit of a euphemism for having to get creative in order to balance the books and boost Hong Kong's struggling economy. The city has been facing multiple headwinds, including a real serious downturn in its property market, as well as external factors, including geopolitical tensions. So the government really has very little room to maneuver, and experts are projecting a consolidated budget deficit of over 100 billion Hong Kong dollars for the second year straight. That's more than 13 billion US dollars, and it's double what the government had initially projected for the fiscal year ending in March 2024. So Paul Chan really does have to strike a fine balance between fiscal prudence and social welfare. He also has to manage the weight of the public's expectations in charting a pathway forward towards a sustained recovery for this city.
All right. Even as we speak, Patrick, we're showing live visuals of Paul Chan delivering the budget. Get us more as to what are people looking forward to in particular?
Well, look, the real big thing that people are looking out for is what sort of measures the government's going to put in place to try and lift the ailing property sector. In particular, there is a lot of pressure on the government to lift curbs on transactions, specifically additional stamp duties on non-local buyers of properties, as well as buyers of second homes as well. Remember, the government did actually halve those back in October, but they've had limited effect. But now lawmakers, businesses, and of course the real estate sector is saying that they just aren't appropriate given the condition of the property sector right now. So some of them are calling for these additional stamp duties to be scrapped altogether. But analysts have also cautioned that even if they are lifted, they may only have a short-term impact on the property sector, because that is ultimately going to be determined by interest rates and consumer and the market confidence. It's something that has been dampened of late in recent months in particular. So, you know, whatever happens, it isn't necessarily going to stop that downward trend in the property sector, which is one of the key problems that Hong Kong's facing right now.
All right, Patrick, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those details. U.S. stocks closed near flat on Tuesday ahead of inflation and other economic data that could shed light on the Fed's response to interest rate cut. As corporate earnings season winds down, investors refocused on economic data and the likely path of the U.S. rates. Equities have been on a furious rally for weeks, fueled largely by enthusiasm about artificial intelligence-related stocks that lifted the S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrials to record levels while leaving the Nasdaq just short of a new high. With the latest employment report not due until next week, the spotlight is on Thursday's January Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, or PCE, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. The S&P 500 gained 8.65 points, up by 0.17% to end 5,078 points, while the Nasdaq Composite rose 0.37% and gained 59.05 points to close at 16,035. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by 0.25%, losing 96 points to 38,972. Getting action from the Asian markets now. The Asian stocks traded within tight ranges on Wednesday. Japan's equity benchmark was unchanged at the open, with stocks supported by banking sector amid expectations that the Bank of Japan may tweak policy in the coming months. Shares in South Korean market advanced slightly. Meanwhile, Hong Kong announcing its 2024-25 budget today as its economy regains some momentum but remains far from a consolidated footing. Investors have their eyes on the budget as it is expected to focus on boosting competitiveness, lifting recovery. In the ongoing World Trade Organization ministerial conference in Abu Dhabi, India made a strong case for a permanent solution to the public stock holding or the PSH issue. PSH refers to the practice of governments holding stocks of essential commodities for food security purposes. India argued that resolving PSH, a pending issue for 11 years, is crucial for achieving food security and improving the livelihoods of millions residing in developing nations. India emphasized that focusing solely on the trade interests of exporting countries neglects the fundamental needs of developing nations, highlighting the support from over 80 countries representing more than half the world's population for their proposed PSH. India urged the WTO to address this imbalance and ensure a level playing field for resource-poor farmers. All right, on to sports now. Indian middle order batsman Shreyas Iyer has been included in Mumbai's squad for the Ranji Trophy semi-final to be played in Mumbai on Saturday. Mumbai are set to face Tamil Nadu in the last four clash. Shreyas will replace Suryansh Shedge in the squad of 16 that was finalized by Mumbai's selection committee, chaired by former India pacer Raju Kulkarni. When Shreyas had made himself unavailable for the quarter-final citing fitness concerns, it had led to a furore over whether the batsman was spacing himself up for the Indian Premier League at the cost of first-class cricket. The Mumbai camp will now be hoping that Shreyas Iyer bolsters a wobbly middle order with a strong showing in the semi-finals. Traditional Japanese Hina dolls are on display at Okayama Prefecture, Japan, ahead of the annual Girls' Festival on March 3rd. The dolls are on display at 30 locations in the Ashimori district, including merchant houses built during the Edo period. The event runs to March 23rd. All right, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi,